Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, where our lessons are scheduled to lead you to success. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. In this lesson, we learn about plan schedule management. This is a very important process in project management, and without a good schedule management approach, your project is destined to fail. We cover the policies and procedures of plan schedule management. We discuss why it is so important to your project, and really, you should never skip this process. And of course, we'll cover the inputs, the tools and techniques, and we will look at the all-important output of the process, which is the schedule management plan. We begin with a look at the important activities that make up the knowledge area. The official PMBOK guide definition is as follows. Project time management includes the processes required to manage the timely completion of the project, and this is accomplished by defining activities which are then sequenced. We'll give them a duration, we assign resources to them, and we will from all of this, create our schedule, a sequenced list of activities of a given time that includes resources, and this schedule is then executed over the project life cycle. Now let's take a look at the processes that help us make this happen. Planning is one of the first things we do in almost every single knowledge area from the PMBOK guide, and project time management is no different. Our first process is plan schedule management, the process of establishing the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, and controlling the project schedule. Once we have a plan, we are going to be thinking about, what is it that we're going to have to be doing exactly on this process, which means we're going to have to define our activities. This is the process of identifying and documenting the specific actions to be performed to produce the project deliverables. Once we know what we're doing, we're probably going to be thinking about, well, in what order are we going to do this? We're going to sequence the activities. This is the process of identifying and documenting relationships among the project activities. At this point in time, we have a plan for time management. We have our activities defined, and we know in which order we're going to do them. So the next thing we're going to have to do is define who is going to do all of this. This is the process of estimate activity resources. Here we estimate the type and quantities of material, human resources, equipment, or supplies that are required to perform each activity. Once we know who is going to perform an activity and we know their skill level and how good they are, now we can say how long it's going to take them. This is the process of estimate activity durations, where we estimate the number of work periods that are needed to complete individual activities with estimated resources. Now at this point we have everything together to finally move on and develop our schedule. This is the process of analyzing activity sequences, durations, resource requirements, and schedule constraints to create the project schedule model. After this point, we are going to be implementing our project schedule on the project, which means things are going to change, there are going to be delays, there are going to be tasks that get started early or late. We're going to have to keep this under control. This is what the process of control schedule is for. Here we monitor the status of project activities to update project progress and manage changes to the schedule baseline to achieve the plan. And here you see these 7 processes again, but with the focus of into which process groups do they fall. And it is quite obvious the focus of this lesson, the process of plan schedule management, is obviously a planning process. One final note about these processes: even though there are 7 of them, most people, they really only see them as 3 when they execute these processes. Plan schedule management and control schedule, the first and the last process, they are pretty separate. But then the processes of define, sequence, estimate resources and duration, and develop the schedule, these 5 processes, to most people, they're just one thing. They do these 5 processes at the same moment, in the same instant. They think about all of the things that need to be done in these 5 processes at the same time. But in the PMBOK guide, they're shown as 5 separate processes, again, because there's a different focus behind each of these, and we use different tools and techniques to implement what needs to be done in the process. But now, back to plan schedule management. The main concept to understand behind the plan schedule management process is that it is the process of establishing the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, and controlling the project schedule. So why is that important, you may ask? Well, it can be easy to just gloss over this process, but that is a critical mistake. The schedule provides guidance and direction for your project, and without it, you do not stand a chance of delivering on time. Never skip this process. And yet, even though this is an important process and you should never skip it, there's not really all that much to it, and really not all that much to say about it. It has 4 inputs, it has 3 tools and techniques, and it has this one single output, the schedule management plan. Nevertheless, let's jump into the details and see how it's done. All the processes in the PMBOK guide are here for us to do something, and in order to do something, we apply tools and techniques to our inputs. So before we can apply these tools and techniques, we have to understand the inputs. Our 4 inputs are the project management plan, the project charter, the enterprise environmental factors, and we also will be using some organizational process assets. The project management plan, according to the PMBOK guide, is the document that describes how the project will be executed, monitored, and controlled. It is usually a formal written document that is signed and approved. It guides project execution and control, and you cannot begin work on the project until the plan has been approved by the project stakeholders. Why do we need it here? Well, it contains subsidiary plans and subsidiary documents. For instance, it contains the scope baseline, which includes the scope statement, and in there we will be able to figure out, okay, what kind of tasks are we going to have to be working on our project. That will help us to develop a plan for managing time, for managing our schedule. It also contains other information, scheduling related information on cost, risk, and communication decisions that have already been made that are important to know as we are planning our schedule. Our second input is the project charter, a document that is issued by the project initiator or sponsor that formally authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. The project charter gives you, as the project manager, the authority to proceed with the project that you have been assigned to do. In this document, you are identified as the project manager. It is broadly based and provides just enough information to initiate the project. Why do we need it here as an input? Well, the project charter already contains a high-level schedule. It contains the milestone schedule, which we outlined in there, saying, well, we're going to start it in this month, we will end it a year and a half later, and here are 3 or 4 milestones in between. This milestone schedule is an important input to planning your schedule management approach. Input 3 and 4 are the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. In this slide here, we want to take a little bit of a look at what is the difference between those two. Well, the enterprise environmental factors are conditions that are not under the immediate control of the team, that influence, constrain, or direct the project that you are working on. As examples here of enterprise environmental factors, we have the organizational culture or the resource availability and scheduling software that your organization is using. So this information is very important as you are planning your approach to schedule management. And then on the other side, we have the organizational process assets. These are plans, processes, policies, procedures, and knowledge bases that are specific to the performing organization, which means it's specific to your organization where you are executing your project. And why do we need these here for this particular process? Well, you may have policies that talk about tools for schedule monitoring, or you may have policies specific to schedule control. You need both the enterprise environmental factors to know what software you need to use and the organizational process assets to get the policies that tell you how do we in our organization control our schedule. And that's it already for the inputs to this process. So we're moving on to our 3 tools and techniques, which are expert judgment, analytical techniques, and meetings. Expert judgment, our first tool and technique, is judgment that is provided based on expertise in an application area, knowledge area, an industry, or a discipline, as it is needed for what we're doing right there at the moment. And this kind of expertise may be provided by you yourself, by other project managers, by the sponsor of your project, or by team members. This is guided by historical information from previous projects. You cannot be an expert unless you have done something several times before. This is how you gain this kind of expertise. And by having this kind of expertise, you can give insights about your project environment. For instance, you know that, well, historically, our company does schedules in such and such a fashion. And because you have all of this expertise, you can also provide solutions through selecting methods or by knowing how to reconcile the differences that you have between chosen methods. For instance, you can suggest that, well, in our company we normally use such and such a software to manage our schedule, or we have such and such an approach. This is how expert judgment is going to help you as you plan your schedule management. Our second tool and technique, analytical techniques. Those are methodologies that will help you to decide which option amongst many you could be employing on your schedule. So it allows you to choose between various options. For instance, should you be fast tracking or crashing a project at a particular time? This is a schedule technique to increase the pace of work that's being completed on your project. Should you use rolling wave planning? This is an iterative technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term is planned in detail, while the work in the future is planned at a higher level. When should you apply leads and lags? on your project activities. This is a refinement that's applied to develop a viable schedule by adjusting the start time of future activities. But you also need to know about alternatives analysis. You need to look at various options that you have on your project, and you need to decide, you need to analyze which of these options are we going to use. We talked a couple of times about project management software, scheduling software. What if you do not have this kind of a software and part of your project's job is to purchase such a software? Well, you are going to have multiple alternatives, and one analytical technique is you have to decide between them. So these are all methods to review schedule performance without analyzing your schedule performance, without looking at all the options that you have and going into it and deciding which one am I going to use. Well, you're just guessing in the end, and you won't be able to really come up with a solid schedule. So the importance of using analytical techniques as you're planning your schedule management approach cannot be underestimated and stressed enough. Our next tool and technique, meetings, they are pretty straightforward. Of course, we all know what meetings are, but who is involved when it comes to meetings to develop the schedule management plan? Well, the project manager and the project team to start with. Any sponsors or stakeholders, including those responsible for schedule planning and execution, should participate in these meetings. And it's, of course, an easy way to discuss the schedule management plan and to address any problems that might arise over the project and how you are going to approach these in terms of your schedule, in terms of your time. What do we do if we are 10% behind schedule? What do we do if we are 10% ahead of schedule? These are the kind of discussions that you want to have during your schedule management meetings. These meetings, they can either be casual or formal, depends all on the size and needs of your project, but most importantly, it gets everyone together. It gets everyone together, and we talk about our schedule management approach, we talk about our schedule management plan. Everybody has input, everybody has their say, and through this we get buy-in from the team. And that's it already for our tools and techniques, which means we are moving on to our outputs. Or should I say output without the S there, because there's really only one. And yes, we've mentioned it a couple of times already. It is, of course, the schedule management plan. Please note, this is not the schedule. This is the plan in which we describe how we will arrive at this schedule. So let's think back to the very beginning. We talked about the 7 processes here in project time management. Well, in this plan, we are going to talk about how are we going to define the activities on our project. What type of a methodology are we going to use for our sequencing? Who is going to estimate the activity resources? What type of approach are we going to use to estimate activity durations? What software are we using to develop our schedule? And are there any specific rules that we follow in regards to controlling our schedule? All of this will be documented in the schedule management plan. We're planning all the processes, all the other processes in this knowledge area, and we're documenting it in this plan here. So, the schedule management plan is a component of our overall project management plan. It establishes the criteria and the activities for developing, monitoring, and controlling the schedule. But wait a minute, you might say. I only have a 3-month-long project. Is it really important for me to have this? Yes, it's important for you to have this, but your schedule management plan can be formal or informal. It can be detailed or broad. If you have just a small project, well, then it will probably fit onto the back of your hand. It all depends on the needs of your project, of the requirements of your organization, of what your sponsor wants you to do. If your sponsor tells you, hey, look, I just need a milestone schedule and that's really it, well, you pretty much have your schedule management plan already completed for you. But if you have a very detailed and formal schedule management plan, then it will include control thresholds for monitoring schedule performance. These thresholds, they're typically shown as percent deviations from the parameters that are found in the baseline plan. Remember, what are we going to do if we're 10% behind schedule? What are we going to do if we're 10% ahead of schedule? There will also be performance rules, measurements, and descriptions that can be found in your schedule management plan. Here we're mostly talking about earned value and how we approach earned value calculations. And of course, we'll also describe reporting formats in our schedule management plan. For example, how often are we going to calculate earned value numbers? Or if I call you and say, would you please send me a schedule, in what format are you going to send that to me? Not particularly, is it going to be a PDF document or a Microsoft PowerPoint file that you're sending to me, but what is it going to look like? Are you going to send a milestone schedule, or is it going to be a detailed or an overview Gantt chart? All of this documented in our schedule management plan. And that's it already. So let's review. The plan schedule management process establishes the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, and controlling your project schedule. It provides guidance and direction on how the project schedule will be developed and managed throughout the project. It is a vitally important component of the project management plan. You can't have a project management plan without a schedule management plan. Depending on the needs of your project or organization, the schedule management plan can either be formal or informal, or it can be broad or highly detailed. It really all depends on your project's particular needs. And this already concludes our look at the plan schedule management process. So it's time for Justine to say,
Gotta run.
And it's until next time from me.